There's no strategic narrative from church institutions and church denominations around welcoming people seeking refuge. I think church leaders spoke out over some of the more extreme ends in politics, but there's a lot more to do in terms of really recognising the DNA that this is in the Christian church. And the other challenge has really been responding to the politics. We've really tried to navigate that well.
Welcome to the Love the Stranger podcast. My name is Samuel Luak and I am part of the Welcome Churches team. Today we are privileged to have Emily Shepherd, the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Welcome Churches, as our guest. Since co-founding the charity in 2018, Emily has led the growth of Welcome Churches into the national movement of over 1,400 churches, equipping them to provide cross-cultural, trauma-informed support for refugees and those seeking asylum. Emily recently announced her decision to step down from her role, marking a significant transition for her and for Welcome Churches. In this episode, we reflect on her journey, the challenges and triumphs of leading a movement of welcome, and what lies ahead for refugee support in the UK. Join us as we gain invaluable insight from Emily's experience and explore how we can continue to build communities of welcome and belonging for all. This episode was recorded at the end of March before Emily officially stepped down from her role. Emily, welcome. So we will go through a few questions with you, and I really want to hear your heart. So the first question is about Welcome Churches, especially being the co-founder and also CEO of Welcome Churches for 8 years. So what inspired you in the first place? What was your heart in the first place to come up with Welcome Churches?
Yeah, so as you said, I was involved in setting Welcome Churches up from the start with a lady called Karina Martin. And Karina was leading a charity called Upbeat Communities in Derby. And I joined her in Derby to help grow what was then a national project within that local charity. And then as we grew that national project, we realised that a separate charity was needed to grow the national vision and also to help the local to thrive as well under Upbeat Communities. And so Karina was the CEO to start with, and I was the operations director. And then over a few years, Karina left, and then I went on a bit of a journey of CEO alongside Sue Butler and then doing it by myself. So it's been a journey of different roles, but always with the same heart to see every refugee welcomed by the local church. And before I joined Karina, God had already put it on my heart to do something around helping churches welcome refugees. Before I did this, I worked at Christians Against Poverty in Bradford, and John Kirkby, who set CAP up, had said that he could see how people would come to CAP and see what they did and replicate what they did for other causes. And God really spoke to me through that. And through a friend who was working with destitute asylum seekers at the time, so people who had gone through the asylum system and had their asylum case refused. And what happens at that point, most people would expect that those people would automatically get deported and removed from the country. But a lot of the time, what happens is that people just get evicted and they're not allowed to work and they're not allowed to claim any public funds, any benefits or anything like that. And so they really end up at the mercy of local charities, and many become homeless at that point. So I had a friend who was working with people in that situation, and God really opened my eyes to some of the injustices that people were facing after they'd gone through the asylum system, and some of the ways that these people were being treated, very forgotten people and very ignored by a lot of society. So I was exploring what that looked like and exploring how I could use what I'd learned at Christians Against Poverty for people who had gone through the asylum system, but broader for people who are arriving seeking safety. I met Karina at a conference, and then what she was doing really resonated with me and was very similar. So I offered to join her and pool our resources and grow the national project that they'd started in Derby.
Yeah, so I think starting a national charity like Welcome Churches would be very challenging, especially when your heart is to see the whole nation and churches welcoming those seeking asylum and refugees to start this. And before you see the vision you have seen?
Yeah, it was challenging, but it was exciting as well. And the excitement definitely was bigger. And it was such a privilege to grow this vision and to see other people getting on board with it and to see different people joining in and participating. And there was so much good happening, and it was exciting to see different churches get on board and to see more people being welcomed. And there was so much good. But yeah, there were challenges as well. I mean, and there's been challenges every year. So I was thinking about this question beforehand. I was thinking, well, there weren't just challenges in the first year, there's been challenges every year. But the headline of Welcome Churches is that God has been faithful, and God has continued to be faithful time and time again in ways when we just didn't know what was going to happen next, and we didn't know what the solution would be. In the first year, so we were a team of 3. There was myself and Karina, and we had an intern from Eritrea with us, as well as we separated from Upbeat Communities. So we became our own charity in the February time of 2018. And then in the summer, both myself and Karina had big personal circumstances that meant that neither of us could work for the summer. We were both unable to work, and we really couldn't do anything. We literally couldn't. And obviously the funding was critical, as it has been many times since, but then we couldn't do anything about that. We didn't have the capacity to be applying for funds or being encouraging people to donate, to give to the vision. But then at the end of the summer, there was a trust that had heard about us through one of their family members who was at Karina's church, and they wanted to give us a donation, and that we really see that as our first miracle funding, when we really couldn't do it in our own strength. We couldn't do what you're meant to do, and all the professionals say you're meant to do in fundraising, but God provided and was with us in very difficult circumstances. And that has been true time and time again, when we particularly, I think there's something particularly around funding, isn't there? And finances, that we're asked to trust God with them. And there have been several times when we have had to trust that God would bring in the money that we need at the right time. And he has done. Even over the last few months, we have seen his goodness and his faithfulness in providing finances at very critical moments, which we're so grateful for as we continue to trust in him for that.
Yeah, so looking to the stage of Welcome Box and also the beginning, really, as you said, it's very exciting, but at the same time, very challenging in a way that there was so much uncertainty of how things will move on. And even though you could see them by face, but it's still, you need concrete things to see. So what has surprised you the most in this journey? Reflecting on that period of time before you could see the result of what you were praying for and what you were trying to do.
Yeah, so as you said, we started with the project Welcome Boxes, which was about welcoming people, mainly people in the asylum system, with a box of gifts to say welcome. And the visual nature of that gift signified that you weren't the police, you weren't the Home Office, but we were here to say hello. Although I did hear the other day, the first lady that I ever gave a welcome box to in my church in Nottingham when I moved to join Karina, she told me and my friend the other day that she actually thought we were Home Office spies when we first went. It's only 8 years later that she's felt brave enough to tell us that. But anyway, so we started with welcome boxes, and that's the project they were doing in Derby and that we were growing nationally. But we realised that as we were talking with churches about welcome boxes and about how much potential was in it to transform the church community as well as the wider community, we realised that people were getting a bit stuck on the box. They were getting stuck on what is in the box and what is the gift that we give people, rather than the potential there was to get to know people from different nations and really welcome them to be part of every part of community life and to be part of the church community life and to learn from people who are arriving and to be blessed by them. And so that's why we called it Welcome Churches rather than Welcome Boxes, because we knew that the vision was so much bigger. And Welcome Boxes is still something that we do and something that churches can do. But yeah, there's been so many other opportunities as well. And there are so many opportunities for churches to welcome people who are seeking refuge on their doorsteps.
Yeah, so I've had so many testimonies of Welcome Box and how this simple way of showing welcome and turns to be creating real relationships, with people. And I'm really always surprised how God used things like, you see, they don't have value, but God used them for his glory. And so from the beginning, let's move on to the changes. So you have seen so many changes since the beginning, and also you needed to change so many things to move on to come to the state we are in today. So I would like to know, first of all, how did you deal with changes? And what was the thing that really helped you to move on to see that this is the right thing to do?
Yeah, good question. I think the changes have come as we have seen new needs and needed to respond to new needs. So even we started with welcome boxes, but even just as we were starting, we separated from upbeat communities as welcome churches, we recognised the need for the welcome network. So people were being moved around the country, often at very short notice, from one town to another. And so they were being uprooted from one community and placed into another. And that's very difficult for the individual, and also for the church that had welcomed them and got to know them. And so the welcome network was designed to be able to refer people on for a welcome as they moved to a new place. And it was just an idea, really. And we tried to do some research over whether people thought it was a good idea and whether it was needed. But because there wasn't anything tangible to see, the feedback we got was like, yeah, I think so. I think that would be a good idea, but not much more. And so as we designed that as a very basic system, but that has grown and become better and more agile and more intuitive over time. But that was the first need that we saw to respond to. And then we obviously, in 2020, we had COVID, which changed all of us, didn't it? And everybody will have seen their workplaces change during that time, and the way that they work and the way that they respond, and so did we. But what COVID really did for us was to grow our reach, moving more online, and the whole nation moving more online opened up new doors and new opportunities for us in different ways. No longer were we travelling to a church for a day to train one church in a day, but we were training 20 churches in an hour on Zoom. And there was the kind of the efficient nature of it. But also in terms of networking too, it opened up doors for us there as well. I think a lot of networking in the charity world, or in the church world even, often happens in London, and definitely did before COVID. You kind of needed that London presence in order to be able to network with influential people and be part of those conversations. And COVID was a real equaliser across the country. Our offices were in Derby. Sue was working on the edges of London, but we didn't have much of a London presence, and COVID really opened up doors for us that way as well. As everybody went online, it made the networking part of our work a lot easier too.
Yeah, so many changes in a very short period of time. Yeah. Especially the time of COVID was very challenging to everybody, and people had to find new ways of doing things. And I think what you just described really reflect, the positive idea of going with the change and see what God wants to do. So we have Welcome Network, and we have so many churches joining and more joining. And we have then the Welcome Churches vision. So in terms of the churches, what do you see, or what do you observe from the churches in the UK in their approach in welcoming refugees and those seeking asylum? And how do you see in relation to the Welcome Churches vision of no refugee alone?
Yeah, so whilst there have been changes and we've responded to new changes, and I didn't even get on to the changes after COVID with the different mass migration movements we've seen since then from Hong Kong and from Afghanistan and from Ukraine, which has all shaped what we do as well. But the vision has stayed the same, and we've stayed true to the vision. And even, some of the planning that we've been doing recently about framing some of the work that we do and explaining that to churches, we can see how we are still staying true to our vision and to our calling. And you're right, we say no refugee alone, but we usually say no refugee alone to people who don't understand a church context and the way that churches work in the UK. But for those that do understand a church context, we say every refugee welcomed by the local church, because the church has such power in the UK that other organisations don't have. We're ready-made communities of all ages that are welcoming. I mean, I'm sure many of us could debate how welcoming we think our own churches are, but generally we are welcoming, and one of the more welcoming places within local communities. Somebody famous who I can't remember now said the church is the only institution that exists for the benefit of people outside of itself. And churches are everywhere in the UK. They're in every village, they're in every town, every city. So no matter where somebody ends up, they can be welcomed by that church. Whether they're wanting to find out more about the Christian faith or not, the church can be there to help them connect with the local community in a way that nobody else can. And so we've got so much to offer, which is really exciting, and there's so much potential in the church. That means that vision of every refugee welcomed by the local church is actually possible. If every church welcomed a handful of people, we could see that vision be fulfilled. And that continues to be really exciting for the future of welcome churches.
Yeah, you yourself, you are also involved with so many churches, whether churches in the network or churches in the UK. And when you are in contact with churches and you see how churches are welcoming people seeking asylum and refugees, and how really the vision of welcome churches is implemented in a way that each church, of course, would do it separately. But at the same time, when we talk about changes, so many significant things happen in the nation as well. So, for example, the arrival of group of people through the government schemes, whether through the Hong Kong or Afghan or Ukrainian, this group coming with this short period of time through the government schemes, how that affected welcome churches in growth need to change again.
I think every challenge genuinely has brought an opportunity, and it sounds like a cliche and it sounds like something that you read in one of these like management books or something, but that really is true. I was talking with somebody the other day in America, and obviously Donald Trump has just come in, and that's having a big impact on refugee resettlement in America. So resettlement has been stopped. And so this person was saying, whilst there are challenges, we're seeing but where he's got at work and what he's got doing. And reflecting back over the last few years and some of the challenges that we've seen, yes, in terms of big groups of people coming to the UK, but also some of the government policies that we've seen. So the last government had the Illegal Migration Act, which was designed to be very hostile to people who arrive in the UK via their own means. I mean, every legislation for a long, long time now has been designed around making a hostile environment for people seeking asylum. But this one was particularly hostile. And whilst the media focused on trying to be strong on illegal migration and cracking down on people smugglers and things like that, one of the impacts and the consequences of that bill was that people's asylum claims were just not processed very well, and they weren't processed very quickly, which led to there being a lot of people in the asylum system, which meant that the government had to open up new and more temporary accommodation places to accommodate people. So basically putting people in hotels because they'd ran out of space in the dispersal accommodation because they weren't processing people's claims quickly enough. And because they were opening up new accommodation to house people because the claims weren't being processed, that meant that more communities got to meet people seeking asylum, and more churches got to meet people who are seeking asylum. And a lot of those churches are really pleased about it, and they would definitely say they were blessed by the people that they met who were seeking asylum on their doorstep, and particularly those that had communities of people living in hotels. They really enjoyed getting to know those people. And so it's a really good example of how a challenge can bring an opportunity as well. And yes, I'm not saying that was all rosy, and we've all seen protests outside hotels over the last year or so, and some of those protests turning violent as well. So there has been a real downside to that. But I think for communities across the UK, more people have been able to meet people who are seeking refuge. So I've talked about the hotels where people seeking asylum have been placed, but also we've had people come from Ukraine, and everybody who housed and accommodated someone from Ukraine got the opportunity to meet someone seeking refuge. People from Hong Kong have tended to arrive in different neighbourhoods to where asylum seekers normally get placed. And so those neighbourhoods have got to meet people, and people from Afghanistan as well have been connected in with local communities around the UK. So each time there's been a challenge, there's been an opportunity for more people to get to know people seeking refuge. And overall, that has been a blessing, and people have benefited from that. Local communities have benefited from that. And despite what we hear in the media, the UK and the local churches are very welcoming to those who are arriving here.
Yeah, that's actually what we see, myself being in contact with so many churches, attending, for example, friendship festivals, to see churches connecting to people. It has been a real blessing to the church as well. And I know there are so many people who are part of congregations today as well. So it's a real blessing to hear that, not only from Welcome Church's perspective, but also from the local church's perspective, as I'm more involved with different churches. Hi, Samuel here. We hope you are enjoying the Love the Stranger podcast. Every year, thousands of people arrive in the UK with stories of war, persecution, violence, and poverty, hoping for a happy ending. Instead, they often face isolation, hostility, fear, and loneliness. Now, more than ever, a welcome from a local church can make all the difference, changing their story from fear and isolation to one of acceptance and belonging. This is for people like Abbas, who said that his local church in the UK gave him a new family to belong to after his family was killed in his home country. We want every refugee in the UK to receive a warm welcome when they arrive in a new community, and we can do it through the power of the local church. Could you become a story changer today by committing to give regular to the work of Welcome Churches? Your monthly gift will make a refugee feel welcome all year round throughout the UK. Visit welcomechurches.org/donate. Thank you. So when we talk about challenges, of course, leading a Christian national charity in a country where the question of refugees and those seeking asylum and immigration becomes sometimes a very hot political debate, what are some of the challenges in leading a charity like this?
I think the challenge is what is reminding the church that no matter what your political opinions are, and no matter which party you vote for or what you think of people coming to the UK, there is this very strong biblical mandate to welcome the stranger, to practice hospitality. And for lots of different reasons in the Bible why we need to be welcoming people who are seeking refuge and seeking asylum in our communities. When we read our Bibles, we can't get away from that. No matter what you're listening to or what you're hearing on the news, it's just there, and we can't get away from that. And so when there's so much noise about immigration out there, and when it makes our headlines so often, I think that one challenge has been to try and remind the church again and again that this is our calling, and this is part of the DNA of the Christian faith to be involved in this work. And there's still a long way to go with that. Church institutions don't fund this work, and if they do, then it's very small and very piecemeal. There's no strategic narrative from church institutions and church denominations around welcoming people seeking refuge. I think church leaders spoke out over some of the more extreme ends of the Illegal Migration Act and some of the different things that they see in politics, but there's a lot more to do in terms of really recognising the DNA that this is in the Christian church. And the other challenge has really been responding to the politics. We've really tried to navigate that well. We've got it wrong sometimes, and we're sorry for that, but we've tried to walk that tightrope of, despite our own political opinions, and we all have them, to try and represent the UK church's voice on what is right for how we should be responding to the politics that we hear. And so when we've had politicians say very strong, sometimes inflammatory statements, then we've needed to respond to that. This time last year, there was a lot of headlines around people seeking asylum and being baptised. And so that was very much within our area that we had to respond to, and there was no getting away from that. I remember I was meant to be on my Easter holiday and I was in the garden, and Tim, who's in our team, rang me to say that they wanted me to go on Jeremy Vine to talk about people seeking asylum being baptised. So I remember phoning into Jeremy Vine with mud on my face from doing the gardening, trying to talk about why churches baptise people, and why do churches baptise people who are going through the asylum system and who might use that as part of their asylum claim, and the complexities of that in a 2-minute little snapshot when, theologians have been debating baptism since Jesus was walking on earth. So there are things that we've had to respond to, and we've tried to be wise in how we've done that. But they've definitely been some of the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the time that you needed to respond to a media report, for example, very difficult. And I would like to ask you about your position on this issue and that issue. And sometimes it's a very short notice that you have to come now. And as you said, that even on your holiday, they ask you to come and say something, which, as you mentioned, so doing this job in mood of prayer, I think it's really helpful in this kind of situation. So, of course, you have been from the beginning to this time we are talking right now and moving on now from this role. And so I would like to ask about some of the lessons, some of the things that you have learned as a leader in terms of being resilient in all these challenges, seeing always the way forward and being expected to bring leadership and vision to the charity and also to empower the church nationally. So what are some of the things you have learned as a leader of Welcome Churches?
I don't know how people do it without God. I don't know how people do all sorts of things without faith, but how they could lead a charity without that, because that has really kept me grounded and kept me going. And I know that this is what God has wanted me to do, which is why I have done it. And navigating when the challenges come, that's what keeps you going. And you know that God is there and God is good and God is faithful. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of stepping down, as you know, Samuel, that wasn't an easy decision to come to. I've seen Welcome Churches grow from the start, and that's been such a huge privilege, and it's been amazing to see what God has done. But I have felt that Welcome Churches needs to grow again, and it needs a new type of leader to grow its next phases of development and serve in the UK church. So where we've got to is that we've got lots of exciting projects and lots of different things that churches can get involved in and that will really help the church. We've got lots of expertise on the team, particularly cross-cultural expertise. And we really do know what we're talking about. And the team knows what they're talking about. It's not just me. And I know that if I stayed, I would just keep setting up new projects. And I'm sure there's still lots of new projects for Welcome Churches to come, but it can't just be about new projects. And it needs growth that is about consolidation and raising our profile and helping us grow into the next stage. So that's why I'm stepping down. I don't know what's next for me. So it's a bit of a step into the unknown for me as well, which I'm excited about. But yeah, for Welcome Churches, it's time to shift gear, I think, and that requires new leadership.
That's really wonderful. So when you look into the next chapter, after you feel that I've done all that I needed to do here, so how do you see the new chapter of your life in terms of what you have learned here that you will take to be part of your vision beyond Welcome Churches? And as you already mentioned, this started before even Welcome Churches. So God has given you a heart, and the Welcome Church has just been where you share your heart. And then now, what the next chapter look like?
Yeah, I really don't know. I finish and take some time out to think about that. Maybe you could help me, Samuel, work it out. Maybe you can mentor me and disciple me to work out what's next. But you're right, God has laid certain things on my heart, and he's definitely given me a passion for people who are seeking refuge and people who face injustice as they do that. So what that looks like next is still to be decided, but yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, remember you led our prayer and you asked about our dreams for Welcome Churches. So I would like also to know, what is your dream for Welcome Churches?
My dream for Welcome Churches is that it would become part of every church's DNA to welcome refugees. I've sometimes said that it should be as normal for churches to welcome refugees as it is for them to have a Sunday school or a kids group. And when someone's setting up a new church, that would be one of the first things they think about. And I think it should be one of the first things that churches think about is, what are we doing to welcome the stranger, and what are we doing to care for those who are seeking refuge, and working out what part they play. It should be part of every church's DNA to be thinking like that. And that's my dream.
That's really good to hear that. And as somebody who will continue to be part of what God is doing across the team at Welcome Churches, would be this a good advice. So my next question is really about advice. So what are some of the advice you would like to offer to the person who will come after you? Let's say the new CEO or the team that has been working with you, and also to any other Christian, for example, church leaders. Any advice you have that people can learn from this?
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. I think what I'd like to say is that it shouldn't just be about one person. And I hope and pray that Welcome Churches is never about one person, but it's about a team supporting each other, and serving the church together. And we do have a very special team. It's different to other charities, especially in its intercultural nature. It's very special and unique. And I would say to the next CEO to embrace that, to embrace the intercultural nature of the team and all the different learnings that people bring from that. And that means that people may express themselves in different ways, or they may work in different ways to what is seen as a British way of working. People may have different experiences and different ways of doing things, but there's so much within that for us all to learn from, and from the UK church to learn from as well. And I'd say just enjoy the adventure. It is an adventure where you know that God is with you, and there's so much good yet still to come.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear that. And especially, I think that's also your prayer that you would like to see. So in terms of advice, again, we have the network churches, Christian who work with us. We have people really who have been part of Welcome Churches, Welcome Network, and all that we do. What the churches, other organizations. So what do you want to say to them?
I would say, please stay involved in Welcome Churches. I hope and pray that it will grow into a movement where so many people can feel that they can play their part and feel a part of Welcome Churches, that it isn't just about the people on the staff team, but yes, so many people play their part in different ways. For those that give financially, your gifts are really needed and they're really valued, whether they're small amounts or large amounts. We really, really do appreciate them. And for the churches in the network, we love having you in the network. We love having a presence in so many different communities across the UK, and we really value that. And we hope that we can grow our relationship with you, with each of our churches, and grow everybody's learning. We're all on a journey of learning how to welcome people from different nations. None of us know it all. For those of us that have been doing it for years and years, or those that are just starting out, there is always more to learn, whether that's about a new culture or new developments in legislation. Everybody's story is unique. And because everybody's story is unique, that means that there's always more we can learn from each other. My prayer for the UK church, that we will learn to learn. We will learn to learn from people who are seeking refuge, that people seeking refuge will be really valued and honoured in the UK church. Those of us who haven't needed to flee our homes, we will learn more about who God is from those that are in our communities who have sought refuge.
Thank you so much. That's really good. You know, I've been also involved with Churches Connect meetings in different parts of the country. So I can see this, what you are saying, with local churches, to see that God is on the move, and people who come to us, they have also something to share. And I'm glad to see churches knowing that when people come to us, they're not only receiving, but they're also coming to empower the church and to help our church as well. And so what are the things that, if you write a book about your journey with Welcome Churches, what do you want us all to remember as a legacy?
Gosh. That is a big question. I don't think I've got a book title, but I would say that God is at work through people on the move. That's something that Patrick Johnston, who is the author of Operation World, has said in one of his books. He was one of our trustees. But that is so true, that throughout history, God has been at work through people on the move. And it's so true today as well. And God is at work through people on the move. But I don't know whether the rest of us always realise that. And we don't realise where God's blessing is. And so, I don't know, someone can help me work out the book title, but it's something around God's blessing through people on the move and how we don't always realise that.
As we come to the end of this conversation now, do you have anything else you would like to say to those who are listening to us, especially those who know you for many, many years? You know, there is nowhere we mention Welcome Churches without you, because you have been here. And also myself, I meet so many people sometimes say, yeah, I met Emily, you know, because you have been on this journey for years. So Do you have any final reflections and final words you would like to say to our listeners?
Yeah, I think thank you. Thank you for everybody who has believed in the vision of Welcome Churches till now. That has very personally, that's been friends who took me into their home and gave me a place to stay when I wasn't getting a salary, to friends that have given financially and family, and everybody that I've met in different circumstances as well. It's always so amazing when people say, well, I love what Welcome Churches does, or what Welcome Church is about is so fantastic. That's so humbling and so amazing when people say that. So thank you to those that have been involved, and to those that love what we do but could maybe be involved more. Then please think about how you might be able to do that and how you might be able to join with the vision more in the future, because we really do need you and need your support.
Thank you. I feel like on behalf of the team, on behalf of all the friends of Welcome Churches, all the people I have met on behalf of Welcome Churches and being part of this journey, I really want to thank God for his faithfulness and his goodness for Welcome Churches, and for you, Emily. It has just a lifetime privilege, to not only to work alongside you, but to see your passion, your heart, and to see your leadership. I think you're full of grace and truth. And this is really a value that we will miss. But we will be praying for you, and all the friends of Welcome Churches will be praying for you. And I'm really glad that we've been co-hosts of the Love the Stranger podcast. And I will continue to be here, but I will always celebrate your legacy and all that God has done through you across the teams. And at Welcome Churches will be celebrated, and I will be the one to celebrate this. So thank you so much. And I pray that God will continue to bless you abundantly as you move on into your new chapter.
Thank you, Samuel. I mean, just because I'm leaving, everyone focuses on me at the moment, but the team is, there's so much of God's faithfulness in the team and each of the team members, and that includes you. And as you say, you meet people that say, oh, I met Emily, and that's a good thing. But I tell people, have you met Samuel? Have you heard about how good God has been in Samuel's life? And some of the testimonies you have of God's goodness and faithfulness are just amazing. So I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful that you will be part of the Welcome Churches team going forward as well, because you have so much to bring and so much to give to the UK church as well, which I'm very grateful to God for.
Thank you. God bless you, and we continue to pray for you and to follow what God is doing in the next chapter of your journey.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Love the Stranger podcast, brought to you by Welcome Churches. To learn more about our work or to make a donation, visit welcomechurches.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, review, share, and distribute to help us spread the word.